Hello, everyone. It is August 8th, 2018. Hope everybody's having a great week. As you can see, I am still up here in Pennsylvania seeing my parents. I'm probably going to be here for another week. Hello, Joey. Hello, Kelly, Tara, Christina, Shuri. Hope everybody is doing great. Hope we get a nice size audience tonight for this Unfound live program. If you are watching this on YouTube and maybe you're unsure of when this plays, I go live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Unfound podcast page, not the private discussion group, but the page. Carrie and Heather, Barbara, Pamela, hello, Christina, giving me the fist, the gun, and the high. I like that. Barbara, hello. So once again, if you're not sure if you're running across this on YouTube now, because this program, what happens is it gets recorded automatically by Facebook, and then I upload the file to YouTube for anybody that missed it. So if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you should know that plays 9 p.m. Eastern. Every Wednesday night, once again, on the Unfound podcast page. Tracy, what's up? Sarah, Heather, Sue. Pamela says I stayed awake. Thank you, Pamela. Janet, good to see you. I hope you're doing well over there in Ohio. Carrie, Michelle, Penny. Everybody, it's good to see everybody tonight. As I've always said, this is my favorite time of the week. Obviously, I enjoy talking to the guests who end up on the program and everything, but being able to interact with you, and we talk out some of these cases that are in the news. You ask me questions. I get to answer you. Of course, then, we have good discussions here on this live show. I really enjoy it, and I'm glad I started. I guess I must have started this maybe in October of last year. Hard to believe it's like been 10 months or something like that. That we've all been doing this together. Kara, Christina, Ann, Dorothy, thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. As I was saying, you can still see that I'm still in Pennsylvania. You can see the door back there. Those are, some people have asked me before, what's on the door? Those are a bunch of pins from like colleges and states and all sorts of different things that my parents have gotten traveling the United States and elsewhere. There's two posters up behind me. One is of Jesse Owens. The other one is of Arnold Palmer. Those are actually Lincoln Mercury posters from like the 60s or 60s, something like that my grandfather got. He was in the car business. And this is the room that I sleep in when I am here in Pennsylvania seeing my parents. This actually used to be my mom and dad's office, but they moved the office one room over that way and then made this. There's a bed right here to my left. So that's where I do the program from. Emily, good to see you. Patrick, Jess, Dee Dee, Wonder Woman, good to see you. But I think I'm going to be here probably for another week, and then I will be heading back to Florida. Some things that maybe you should know about. It was really good. This past Saturday, I got to meet with Dr. Eric Grabowski. If you remember him, he was the guest for the Donna Mekalenko episode from April of last year. He is usually a professor in North Dakota, but he is originally from the Pittsburgh area. He was in the area, so I'm in the area. We got together at a restaurant down in Irwin, Pennsylvania, and talked for about an hour and a half. We got a good discussion, talked about a lot of true crime stuff, just not maybe any particular case, but just the general stuff of what's going on out there and where I think Unfound is headed, from now for the rest of the year. So it was good seeing him. I had met him last summer when I was here as well. And then, hello, Angela. What's going on? And Sherry and Jessica. Good to all see you tonight. Thanks for tuning in. And then, and by the way, I only had one question sent to me before the program started. So if any of you have any questions about anything in particular, as long as it's PG rated and not too personal, I can answer that for you. It can be true crime related, missing persons related, or, somebody asked me about if I saw Incredibles 2 last week. So I only have one question so far tonight. So if you have any, please let me know. Also, last Friday, so like 5 days ago now, I met with the CEO of Trib Total Media, which, as I think all of you know by now, is a media company here in the Pittsburgh area that I've worked with. They cover missing persons cases in Western Pennsylvania. I try to go out and find people for them to talk to. I got together with her for lunch last Friday. It was good seeing Jennifer. Had a great conversation. The meeting must have gone about an hour and a half. We've actually known each other for a long time, but we talked about maybe some new things that we may be doing. And in fact, the plan is for me to go over their offices this coming Monday to meet with a couple people. We'll be talking some things over there as well. So I'm really looking forward to all of that. And so, I thought you might like to know about that as well. It was good to see her. We met down in the town where we both grew up, Leechburg, Pennsylvania. So it was good to be there. And it was really encouraging, to talk to her about some of the other things that maybe we have planned, maybe even some new things. So it was good. Joyce, good to see you. I haven't talked to Joyce Rivatuzo in a while, but she's tuned in tonight. Good to see you, Joyce. Maybe, Joyce, I can give you a call next week when I'm driving back to Florida. I have to talk to you again. But Susie, Michelle's saying, I sent a question too, but you may have not seen it. I kind of done the last second. Well, let me go check, Michelle. Oh, there you go. I do see it now. I see it now, Michelle. You're asking me about last week's case, Leah Peebles. Here's the question for anybody that hasn't seen it. Hey, Ed, what do you think of maybe Johnny, Desiree, DJ, and Javier all being in on the Leah Peebles case together? I've had a very strong feeling she was human trafficked for years, and I believe it as much today after listening to her mother tell her story. I just can't shake this feeling. Of course, I could be wrong, and I'm not saying Leah chose this life at all. She could very well be out there. What do you think? I think that's possible. I think it's conceivable. But the other side of this, and I know that one of the listeners, Tobias, is he from Sweden or Finland? I apologize if he watches this, one or the other. He has pointed out that, if Javier and all these people had something to do with it, why would they keep her car? Why would they leave the blood in it? And those are very good points. And I really don't have any answer to that. Why not just ditch the car totally? As has happened in some cases that Unfound is covered. Like Jeff Joseph's case where the car disappeared, for example. Why didn't that happen? I don't know. I think that it's possible that they all came up with this together. But there are just some things then that I have to think about a little more deeply, considering that they kept the car. It's the same way I feel like in the Nico Lisi case. Why did they keep the truck around, at least parts of it? Why did they do that? I don't know. And so I feel like the same way in this case that, I just don't know. I think what you ask is conceivable, Michelle, but I think that probably raises a lot more questions than it answers. Hello, Sherry. Hello, Linda. Good to see you, Linda. I'm up here in the Pittsburgh area. I'm sorry I haven't had time to get together. I apologize. Met some people, but busy doing work, seeing my parents here. Sherry, Janet. Janet asked me, I'm going to get to that question, Janet, here in a moment. Hello, Christina. Christina says it's a serious souvenir pin collection. Yes, Christina, it is. I know. What she's talking about is back here. Maggie, Lana, you're here. Maggie. Sherry says, plus we can't forget she had been printed before, meaning Leah Peebles. Barbara asks me, what do you think of the Desiree Ferris case from Liberty, Missouri? Barbara, I'm sorry, but I don't know that case off the top of my head. I apologize. Michelle says, more questions. Michelle, I did my best on that answer that I could do. But is it possible they all know each other, Javier, Desiree, and Johnny? Yes, it is. Do I believe that Leah Peebles was sex trafficked? I have to be honest, I don't. I have no proof either way. My personal feeling is probably that she wasn't. And Tara, good to see you. Of course, your family right now has my sympathies right now. Sorry to hear about what is going on with you and your husband, Jeremy. And Angel, thanks for joining in tonight. Good to see you. So as I said, I met with Dr. Eric Grabowski. Good to see him. Good guy. Met with Jennifer Bertetto from the Trib on Friday. And then this coming weekend, I'm going to finally get to see my brother and my sister. We're going to be having a little get-together, and that'll be nice because I haven't seen either of them since I've been here. That just shows you how I've been busy still putting the program together. I already, of course, have Friday's interview done, and it was edited. I looked at it and listened to it today. So it'll be ready for Friday. Doing the interview for next Friday's episode tomorrow evening. So I'm trying to work ahead at least a little bit. So this is just the way it is. There is no vacation for me from Unfound, and that's the way I like it. Shannon says, hello, love your podcast, Shannon. Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. So that's what's going on. Just to kind of introduction to the show. And I think, once again, really haven't decided which day next week I'm going to be going back to Florida. I really haven't decided yet. So I just can't say. Carrie, another Carrie. I have a couple Carries in here. K-A-R-I-E. I think we have a variety of different spellings of Carrie in the group tonight. The question that I got asked before we started the program is, Jill had asked me, are there people being held captive right now? Do you believe that there are people who are missing who are being held captive right now? Jill, I don't know if you're in here or not, but the answer is yes. In a country of over 300 million people, with as many disappearance cases as they are, the odds would say yes. No different than Elizabeth Smart or the women who were in Cleveland or some of the other, J.C. Dugard or whoever. Yes, I do believe that there are people, either men and women, whoever, that are being held captive right now. Yes, I do. Who they are, where they are, of course, I don't know that. But the odds say the answer to your question is yes. Now, if you're asking specifically about unfound cases, my answer is probably not. And I say that because most of the cases that Unfound covers are not fairly new. They're at least a year, year and a half, 2 years old. I'm not saying it's impossible, but the odds are probably not. And in fact, I went through the list. Jill asked me this question. I went through the list just real quickly to look at. And once again, I think the answer is no. I don't believe that any of the people who've gone missing in Unfound's cases are being held captive. I don't believe that. Is it possible that one or two of the women maybe at one time were? Yes. But to believe all these years later, I'm fairly negative on that. Once again, I have no idea. Just the feeling. I don't know. Just trying to use what I think I know about missing persons cases. Those kinds of cases are so rare, at least as far as we can tell, that probably not. So I don't believe that any of the people who have gone missing, of the cases I've covered, I don't know if any of them are actually being held captive. I doubt it. Hello, Helen. I see your wave. Carrie says she's watching while cooking dinner. Well, don't burn yourself, please. And Helen said, oh, Helen, you're a first-time listener, watcher from the United Kingdom. Well, welcome to you. Thank you for making time. I don't know what time it is over there, but thank you for making time. And then there's Emily, my assistant Emily, who's just such a great job. She's tuning in tonight as well. Good to see you, Emily. Kara asked me, did you see that the pig farmer in the Tibbetts nursing. We're going to talk about little Molly Tibbetts, but I did see that. To answer your question very simply, yes, I'm going to get to that in a bit. And I will give you my idea on that. But Jill, if you're not watching tonight, I hope that answers your question about being anybody being held captive. Janet, you had asked me earlier, have you ever thought that any of the cases you have covered could be done by a serial killer? Janet, I've thought about that. I think it's possible. I would have to go through the list and maybe give you, I'd have to probably narrow it down a little bit, but sure, it's possible. I mean, Unfound's covered over 90 cases now. And in fact, we're working very quickly toward our 100th case, which I don't know who the missing person is going to be for that one, but it's, that case is coming up very quickly. So I think it's possible that if one of the cases I've covered is a murder, is it possible that this person, the murderer, killed somebody else? Sure. But off the top of my head, I don't know what that case or those cases would be. And in fact, I think that it would be inappropriate for me to even say, even if I suspected that, because I really would have no proof. It would just be a gut feeling, and that would be something that I would have to talk over with the guest first before I ever said it publicly. But sure, I think it's possible. Sure. Helen says it's 2:15 a.m. I don't sleep much. That's what the time is over where you are. Well, I've been known to stay up till 2:15 a.m. sometimes, Helen. So, all right, that's cool. Thank you for staying up. I appreciate it. I hope I make it worth your while. Kara asked me, hey Emily. Kara asked me off topic, do you speak any languages? I speak French and I'm learning Slovak now. I don't speak any other languages. And I joke about this, but I'm just one of these average Americans who just expects everybody else to know English. I know that's horrible. And I know how other countries feel. Americans go there, we don't know the language. You go to France, we go to Germany, and I'm not a big traveler. I like the United States, and I like driving around the United States, and I've been to both coasts and everything. So I've tried to learn Spanish once or twice, but, all I know is English. That's all I know. So there you go. Lisa asked me, anything new on the Thomas Brown case? Hi, first-time listener. Lisa, thank you for tuning in. I don't have anything new. That doesn't mean nothing new is going on. But Lisa, if you are in the Unfound podcast discussion group here on Facebook, then I would urge you to find Thomas's mother, who is a member there, who answers a lot of questions there. And she was actually at the Unfound meetup a couple weeks ago. I would urge you to ask her. I don't know if she can say anything. I don't know if she'd be allowed to say anything. I don't know. But she's in the group, and I'm sure she could answer that question better than anybody that can talk about the case. I personally have not heard anything, and that's the truth. I'm not withholding anything. So there you go. Deb, good to see you. Penny, love it. Okay. He's really good with the English. Sherry, thank you for backing me up. He's really good with the English language, though. Great writing abilities. Don't let him fool you. Oh, somebody is trying to get on my good side right there. Somebody is really, really sucking up to the teacher. Do you watch Lord and Art's his missing persons videos? Always send me down the rabbit holes. Helen, to be honest with you, and you're staying up to 2:15 in the morning, so I got to answer this question. I don't. That's nothing against. I listen or watch very, very few other true crime podcasts or shows. Just don't have the time. I just don't. If you know how much time that I have, that I've been up here for a month in Pennsylvania, and I'm only going to be seeing my brother and my sister for the first time this weekend. Just no time. If I think it's important, if I'm going to be covering a case that Unsolved Mysteries or Disappeared or somebody other podcast or program has covered before, then yes, I do, just to see what was said, just to get a feel. Otherwise, no. And I don't know if that makes me a bad person or anything. But really, I have no expectations of other hosts to listen to my show. So they have their own work to do. They're busy too. They probably, at least personally, have more things going on than I do. A lot of them have children. They're married. And some of them have other jobs that they have besides their podcast. So I would never expect them to have to want, to listen to Unfound. That if they do, great. I just don't have any time. Just the way it is. So no, I know the program. I know who you're talking about, but I have not watched anything that he's done recently. Lana asks, doing this for some time, I wonder if investigators should think outside the box. Is it possible for missing children to be living adults using aliases or don't know who they are? What do you start? Maybe, Ed, you could have a PR detective on and pick their brain about that. I do think that investigators too often just are happy with the status quo. Let's put it that way. Yes. Mainly because they don't have a lot of missing persons experience, so they get very simplistic about the way they think about things. That's true. Now, is it possible for missing children to be living adults using aliases or they don't know who they are? That is also possible. I think it's very rare. I don't have any statistics to prove that. But do I think that some children run off? Yes. Do I think that some adults run off and start new lives? Yes. In fact, we've had stories within the last few years using DNA. We've figured out the people who were living and had different IDs. Then when they died, I'm thinking of this woman in Texas. I forget her name. And then there was that other guy, older guy who died. He was living under an assumed name for a long time. And then they figured out after he died. So it does happen. I just think it's very rare. Where do you start with something like that? That's a good question. That's why I think that probably when it comes to Unfound, that the strength of the program is cases in which we believe probably foul play was involved. Looking at suspects, looking at alibis and things like that. Really, if you were to just do a program focused on cases where you think that people ran away, I think that would be a very difficult kind of program to do. Whereas I think with what the cases that have come to Unfound have come to me, and of course Emily, finding a lot of these people to speak to and everything, I think in a large majority of these cases, we believe that foul play is involved. Or in the drug cases, maybe sometimes somebody is OD'd and then other people get rid of the body. I think I would have a hard time picking out those cases where I thought that somebody actually ran away. And once again, that might be something where I would have to talk to the guest first. So having a private detective or PI on, I know a couple private investigators. I'm not so sure that they have any more insight on it than I do. And as far as an actual detective, a government, like a police department detective, once again, I just don't know if they have any more insight than I do. I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I don't even know how you'd answer that question. I don't know how you go about proving that somebody ran away and has an alias now. I mean, if you knew that, you could just go find the person right now, I think. Rachel, good to see you. Carolyn, thanks for tuning in. Tara, I have that on my list. I want to talk about that. Helen says, thanks for the answer. You're welcome. It's very kind, your statement. Thank you very much, Helen. It's very nice of you to say. Thank you. Let's get right to that, Sherry, or to Tara. Let's get right to that, Tara. If some of you remember, a couple weeks ago, I had posted a video where I went to where Sherry Mayhan disappeared in Cabot, PA in February of 1985. And in fact, if you see Tara in here, she was one of the people that I met there. And I didn't know this. It's weird how we had the Kimberly Kessler thing from April where I talked to her mom and then like 2 weeks later, she's a suspect in a murder. And now we have a situation where I was just at the location where Sherry Mayhan disappeared back in 1985. And now there is a story out there that somebody was kind enough to post in the discussion group that there is a van that was sold in the area around here somewhere that looked like the van that was involved in Sherry's disappearance, because there was this custom conversion van that was seen that day. And in fact, when I was over there, I got to speak to a guy who saw that van that day. He got off the van at the same stop that Sherry did. I was very fortunate to know somebody, and I thank Tara for making that happen. But having seen pictures of the van, so if anybody doesn't know what was posted about that, that's what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with that disappearance, go to NamUs, go to Charlie Project, and familiarize yourself with it. It's important to me because I lived in the area where it happened, but I'd never been to where she actually disappeared until a couple weeks ago. And this van that was allegedly sighted, and it was sighted, I shouldn't say allegedly, it was sighted there, never popped up after that day. Well, now there is news that a van that is being sold or was sold within the last couple weeks, and the Butler Dispatch, Butler, Pennsylvania, where my parents live near, had a story about it. I have seen pictures of the van. I do not believe it's the van, at least to the way it has been described to me. The sketches that have been out there for the last 30-some years, not to mention that the sighting of the van back in 1985, it was a Dodge, and the van that this pictures of recently is a Ford. So, and really the painting on the side of this van doesn't have a skier on it. It has some like mountain setting, but it looks more like southern Utah, like the whatever that area is called that they used to use for old westerns. It looks more like something like that than a snow-capped mountain with a skier coming down it, which is the description of the van from 1985. So I think this is much ado about nothing. I think. I don't know. It just seems to me, and I have written in my notes, yeah, I have that I doubt it's true. I think that somebody wouldn't be that obvious, would they? I know a lot of people around here still remember that. That was a big story in the area where I sit right now 30 years ago. And to just go about selling the van and keeping it hidden or whatever was going on for 30-some years, it just doesn't sound plausible. It just doesn't. So I think that this is much ado about nothing. I think that it's good that Sherry's disappearance is back in the news. Great. That's spectacular. But I think that somebody jumped the gun on writing that this could be the van that was involved in her disappearance or was seen that day. I mean, you have to remember, the van was seen there, but nobody ever saw her get in the van. The van just might have been there, and she disappeared for other reasons. It just feels to me like somebody jumped the gun, a little too much of wanting to be first instead of wanting to be correct. It just, and sure, you're right. Why would they keep the same van with all the media attention all these years anyway? I don't think they would. And Tara says Jeremy doesn't think so either. And Jeremy was the guy who saw the van and gave the description to the police. So his word is as good as anybody's probably on this planet. And if he doesn't think so, then I don't think so. But is it good that the case is still thought of, that people even think about it? Great. But this is one of those emotional roller coasters that families have to ride every once in a while. At the beginning, of course, there are a lot of emotional roller coasters. As time goes on, case is not solved, the person or little girl isn't found, then there aren't as many ups and downs. But every once in a while, there is a hill again, like I guess with this sighting of this van. I just don't think it's anything. And once again, if you are unfamiliar with this disappearance, please go to Charlie Project or NamUs and read about it. Sherry Mayhan, M-A-H-A-N. And then, like I said, somebody, maybe even I did it as well, posted in the group about this news story out there about this van that is being sold that could be the van connector disappearance. I just don't think that's the case. Carrie says, I'm with you. Tara says, absolutely. Carrie says, I don't think they would keep a huge mobile billboard like that anyway. I agree with you, Carrie. The tough part about Sherry's case is that the van is really unique. And the tough part, I can understand why it wasn't seen after disappearance, because somebody could have said, oh, I was seen and I need to change the van. They could have driven it into a pond. They could have repainted it. They could have burned it and never, or something. They could have stuck it in a barn. It could be in some barn up in the hills of Pennsylvania right now. The problem is that the van wasn't seen before the disappearance. Nobody's ever come forward and say, you know what? Like I can remember back at the time a neighbor of mine had that exact van. Nobody's ever done that. So that's strange to me. It was never seen before, allegedly, and it was never seen after, presumably. So I don't know. That's going to be a stumper, and that case is always going to be in my mind, and I hope to be able to cover it one of these days. On an episode of Unfound and do a good job with it, I hope. Tara says, if nothing else, the story is out there again. Absolutely right, Tara. Yeah. And so there you go. Lan, I hope that answers your question regarding that. So there you go regarding the Sherry Mayhan van. And once again, if anybody's confused, please go look at it after the show, of course, is over. There's something else that I feel like I need to talk about. And I think that a listener gave me a little bit of a hard time about this, and it's no problem. I think that when I'm asked about these things and listeners disagree with me, I think it gives myself a chance to explain myself. A listener, I'm not going to mention his name, but you can see it in the group. I don't think liked it too much that I said that most eyewitness accounts are lies. Okay, didn't like it, and went as far as to say that saying so is irresponsible, which is a pretty pretty strong word. And so what I did was, we have to have a talk about, I think, eyewitness accounts, and what I mean by that, not just from the aspect of, to a crime, witnesses to a crime, but just how people's memories work. Because the mind works the same, whether it's seeing a missing person who's missing, once again, like Renee LaMonna, like seeing her on a subway. The mind works the same way, whether it's seeing a missing person on a subway or actually seeing a crime committed. You see a bunch of guys run out of a bank after a heist. The mind works the same way. The mind does not know. Our minds only work one way when it comes to all of this, and our minds only work one way when it comes to anything. When it comes to recognizing people, recognizing events, etc. That is proven science. There's no, and I had posted something, and so I don't see much difference between witnessing a crime being committed and somebody seeing a missing person, somebody that's been missing for a year, 10 years. It's all the same to me because that's what science tells me. I only know this because of what I read about these types of things. It's my job to know. And on top of the fact, so what I did was, but it did, raise an interesting question for me, is I went back, and some of you know that I wrote about this in the group. As you can tell, it was a long, I don't really usually write long dissertations in the group, but I thought I had to do this. But Unfound has covered over 90 cases now. And so I went through every case, what I could, and sometimes these cases run together, I'll admit it. But I thought about each one, what I remember about the facts, what I remember about what happened afterwards. And I think of the 90-some cases that I've covered, only 9 of them, 10%, that is it, This just shows you how rare sightings are after the fact. In only 9 of them were there sightings of the missing person days to weeks to months to years after the disappearance, what we now know as the disappearance date. Only 9 out of 90 cases. Now, some of them, have been, covered, like Renee LaManna. That's a recent case. There was maybe a sighting of Tiffany Daniels, for example. There's another one where she might have been sighted, months after she disappeared, where her truck ended up at the beach. Only 9 cases. And of those 9, I figured out that at least in 7 of them, the sightings were proven to be lies. So what we come down to after 90 cases, which is a really good sample, if you were a statistician was doing some sort of study on all this, 90 separate missing persons cases from all over the United States, 1 in Canada, 1 in Africa, different ethnicities, of course, different genders, different backgrounds, different ages. It is a really good cross-section of missing persons cases. Any statistician who is going to be, teaching something about missing persons cases and the stats that go along with them could use Unfound's cases to put together a study. So once again, out of 90 cases, only 9 of them had sightings, alleged sightings, after the day of the disappearance. Like I said, a week later, a month later, a year later. Of those, 7 of them had lies intertwined with them. For example, very famously, Suzanne Lyle's case. I mean, her boyfriend's father for weeks was saying that he saw Suzanne here, Suzanne there. Well, the cops ended up following him, finding out he was completely lying. Completely lying. Not to mention, for example, now that we know kind of what happened, in the case of Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. Allegedly, they were seen in a truck with Danny Freeman, just hours or something after this fire. Of course, we now know that Danny died in the fire, and we now know what happened. 3 guys came in there and kidnapped those girls. So that sighting was a lie. Just outright lies. So we only can hang our hat on 2 cases out of 90. And that would be the Tiffany Daniels case and the Renee LaManna case. And I have been, I think, more, truthful, that I even dealt the sightings in both of those cases for my own personal reasons. I don't think that you can actually prove that these people lied. But to me, in both those cases, the sightings of both Tiffany and Renee, I have problems with all of those sightings. But I don't have any proof that they were outright lies. But all the other ones, and I listed them, you can go to the discussion group, they were lies. Okay. So I can't forget that when I go and talk to a new guest and they tell me that, well, my sister was seen, or my daughter was seen, my son was seen, those things. We talk it out. Now, once again, as you know, this is very rare. I mean, the public perception is probably that these missing people, after they disappeared, they're seen everywhere. Whereas in my particular experience with Unfound, in only 10% of the time, 1 out of 10, is there even a sighting that, whether it's proved or can't be proved, after the fact. 10%. It's not very much. And then when you get down to the actual cases where there are sightings that you think may be true, but at least they aren't necessarily lies. You can't prove that they're lies. That's 2 out of 90 cases. That's 2.2%. So, this is why when, I start talking to people about their case and I start internet. No, there we go. Okay. Hope we don't have any internet issues again. Hello, Penny. Good to see you tonight. We were talking about Thomas for about 30 seconds just about 20 minutes ago. This is why I tell guests that if they ever hear about any sightings of their son or daughter, I ask them to be very cautious regarding this. And I give them my experience. Now, I'm always waiting for my experience to change. I wish these sightings were true. I wish people weren't lying. I wish these sightings could be proven. I wish that there was videotape and all sorts of different things. I wish that. It's just that it just doesn't happen. And trust me, I mean, the stories that I've heard, I would never, I mean, some of these stories can get a little crazy. And if families were to go off chasing every sighting, you know, that they hear, I mean, that's all they would be doing. And trust me, there are people out there who are more than willing to allow to do that and lie to get families to do that, because there's just evil people in the world. That's just the way it is. You know, comes up, you know, just recently with this scam that was going on allegedly on the dark web, you know, like a month ago, with allegedly missing young women being auctioned off and everything. That scam was, you know, was sent out to like 3 or 4 different families who had lost like their 20-year-old daughters or whoever else. It was completely a scam, complete lies. But people fall for them. They do. They are more than ready to get their checkbook out and write any. And I understand that. But if they do, they're just the money. I mean, they may be putting themselves in danger. And if the very least, they're going to lose that money. Money that could go probably towards something better when it comes to trying to find their loved one. So I do not think it's irresponsible on my part when I tell people that they should be suspicious of all sightings, and I give them my reasons. I just don't say it because it's just my opinion. I mean, I don't, you know, a lot of this stuff I know because I've read it. A lot of this stuff I know because I've experienced it. And I just don't tell people my own personal feelings. I try to give them the reasoning behind it and the statistics. And now I'm glad that that listener, you know, we got into that discussion. I now know what the statistics are for sightings involving unfound cases. It's 9 out of 10 or 9 out of 90. And of those 9, and 7 of them I know were lies, just out and out lies. So I can tell that to people from now on, and I think that's helpful. For example, being that somebody asked me about the Molly Tibbetts case, this is just one of those things where you just get a feeling. There was a sighting of her at a truck stop. Remember that? It came out a few days after. Even without even knowing anything else, I completely dismissed it. Why did I dismiss it? Because I've read about that in a whole ton of other cases where none of it's proven to be true. In cases that Unfound hasn't even covered. You know, in cases that I've read about, she was sighted at a truck stop, no proof of it. And truck stops have video cameras all over the place. No videotape of the man or woman showing up there. So, let me just add, being that I've been ranting now for a while, let me see what has been said here. How many missing persons cases? Yeah, Dorothy, good one. How many missing persons cases are there rumors that the person was put through a wood chipper, fed to hogs? Too many. Dorothy, I would say about 25% of my guests tell me that story. They tell me about all these rumors that they've heard. At least 25% of them have some kind of story like that. That's true. 25% at least, at the minimum. It doesn't come out in the interviews because I realize that they're just rumors. And they just don't help anybody. Unless they're willing to say a particular farm and a particular hog farm. And, you know, I'm not willing to talk about it because I think it's just people spreading rumors. And they're just trying to cloud the issue. And I don't want the issue to be clouded. As someone who follows Facebook missing people groups, people see, quote unquote, missing people all the time. Then when questioned that, told to go to authority, silence. People like the attention. Lana, you're exactly right. People love the attention. People love to make themselves the center of attention. And it doesn't change in missing persons cases. Erica says, Ed, do you think that the various sightings of Leah Peebles were purposeful lies? You're either chased after a lot of those, right? Erica, he did. And I do believe that they were purposeful lies. I do. Yeah, I do believe that. And in fact, Sharon said as much. She didn't believe the Sister Paula character. She didn't believe these other sightings, even though her husband did. They had a difference of opinion on it. You heard that in the interview. And in fact, that's how it all, Erica, that's how it all got started. You know, why somebody asked me, well, why didn't these sightings of Mia, you know, come up? I guess it came up in the Disappeared episode, and I've not been able to watch the Disappeared episode. I couldn't find it anywhere. The Mia thing comes from that Sister Paula story. You know, and as I explained, it's just a little hard for me to believe that this woman went up and all these guys were around Leah and they allowed this woman to just talk to her and everything else. It's just not plausible. It's just not. And that's where the Mia story comes from. Now you see why I have my doubts. And this is kind of the thing that I go through my head every time I hear about sightings of people. Does it make sense? Families are desperate and scammers prey on desperation. Carrie, you're right. Hi, Susie. How are you doing tonight? Erica says, that makes me so sad considering how many families beg for anyone who knows anything, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, come forward. I'm not trying to turn anybody off from coming forward if they know something. But, you know, I just don't, you know, I guess, what have I told? I don't do this program because I trust people. When it comes to these, my job is to be cynical about everything. That's why I ask the questions that I do. My guests know that, you know, in our private conversations, I ask a lot of pointed questions. You know, just to maybe challenge them just a little bit, kind of get them out of their comfort zone, because most of the people I talk to have been questioned before. And they kind of get in, they start using the same words over and over and over. I'm not saying they're lying, but what I try to do is get them out of their comfort zone a little bit, you know, and give them possible scenarios and ask them and try to get them to think about it a little deeper maybe than other reporters and investigators have done. That's what I try to do. I think that's my job. I think that, you know, I think that's what helps these cases. And so I have to be honest with my, and I'll just be honest with you. I was just talking to a former guest of Unfound yesterday, and she just came right out and said, after doing your program, I don't even want to do any other programs anymore because these other people, they don't seem like they know what they're doing, and whereas you do. Those are her words, not my words. But once again, it comes back to me being very honest and asking pointed questions and really not taking anything for granted. And I think that when people start believing sightings just because, you're starting to take things for granted. And I realize why families do that. They want to believe all these sightings, and I get that. But when it gets to the point that they're chasing things all over the place, they're chasing this sighting, that sighting, and they never see anything like happened in Leah Peebles' case, then I think they need to start at some point sit back and say, is any of this real? She just happens to be there when we're not there. We're there, she's not there. We're not there, she is there. At some point you have to start thinking it's just not real, and I think people are sending us on a wild goose chase. And it's that kind of information that I believe my responsibility is to pass on to the other guests that then I have after that. And so I don't think it's irresponsible when I tell people that I think that most sightings are just outright lies, because a majority of the sightings we've proven through Unfound are lies. We've proven it. So there's that. But once again, getting back to Molly Tibbetts, being that she's in the news recently, I just had a feeling that, well, she was seen at a truck stop. No, she wasn't. Why? Because I've heard those stories before, and none of them ever pan out. Now, what happened to her? don't know. Somebody did ask me if I think it's suspicious that the guy didn't take a polygraph test, the hog farmer. I don't know. I don't know. I know that he has a couple prior charges, against him. Maybe he still has some guilt about that. Maybe he's afraid those things from back then will show up on this current test, and then it'll show to be lying, and then they'll think he had something to do with it when he didn't have anything to do with it. So I look at not taking a lie detector test kind of like I have when, defendants don't take the stand in their own defense. They can do that if they want. This isn't, some country where, we're going to beat confessions out of people. So they're set that. Penny says it's so sick to pray on family is missing someone. True. Dee Dee says the Fargo effect regarding the wood chipper. Exactly right, Dee Dee. That's exactly right. And that's what I tell my guests. Erica, you wouldn't be considered a liar if you were being honest. Yeah, I guess. But I happen to believe in a lot of this stuff. These people know that they're lying and they're just talking. I don't believe that in some of these cases it's a misidentification. I'm more inclined to believe that the person wasn't there at all and just making stuff up, like the Suzanne Lau case that's probably a perfect example of that. I want to believe, that these people are all alive, but you're going to have to give me better evidence than usually I hear in some of these cases as far as sightings goes. You're going to have to do better than that, because some of the sightings, and like I said, I've been honest about this. In Renee LaManna's case, I doubt the sightings. I do. That's not to be negative. That's not to be negative. But there's just things about it that just don't seem to be logical human behavior when it comes to seeing somebody and recognizing somebody and think that they're missing. And there's just some things that logically don't make sense to me. And I realize if I talk to those people, they're going to claim up and down and sideways they saw Renee. So there's nowhere to go on that. I just think that a lot of other people, if they thought that they saw Renee, would have handled those situations differently. These people seem to have handled the situations in the worst way possible, my opinion. I do have no proof that they're lying. Tara says, I guess you're talking about Leah Peebles. I hate to say it, but I think she was abducted and is no longer alive. Claudia, welcome tonight. Shelly says the hog farmer's been in trouble with stalking in the past. Also, Molly tagged a tweet about being in the school library about someone posing as a cop. Shelly says, I wonder if there's something to that. Diane, I think of the case of Thomas Brown, there may have been purposeful lies told by Nathan Lewis. Diane, I totally agree with you. And Shelly agrees with you as well. So we got some. I just thought that I wanted to make that a topic because I think that I owe it to all of you to explain. I need to explain myself when the attitude is eyewitness accounts and things like that, because I know it comes up once in a while, and maybe, it's not something I think that I've talked about much. I don't think we've ever talked about why is it that I feel the way I do about eyewitness accounts. Well, I'm telling you now. And it helps now that I was able to go back through Unfound's cases and actually look at the statistics of sightings in the cases. It only happens 10% of the time. And of that 10%, that 7 out of 9 of them, lies were told. Just outright lies. So I'm just totally cynical about the whole thing. And I'm sure that sightings, and I think even Elizabeth Smart was brought up in the discussion that I was having with this listener. This person brought that up. Well, I went back and looked at Elizabeth Smart's case and how, these two people came into our house at knife point. The little sister saw it and she was whisked away. And then Elizabeth Smart, we have to remember, Elizabeth Smart was missing for about 8 months. It was not as long as like the women in Cleveland. It was about 8 months, I believe. But the reason that that case was finally solved, the way I read it, is not because of a sighting. I mean, I know that's eventually what happened, but at some point, the younger daughter eventually remembered that the voice of the guy who came in and took Elizabeth that night was the same guy who had worked at the Smart house months before. And so they put out this thing looking for him, and that's how she was eventually found. It's because they recognized him, not because they recognized her, not because they recognized Elizabeth Smart. And once again, they were already looking for somebody who was a known entity, who was hanging around town and actually thought that he got away with what he did. To me, that is different than, saying that Elizabeth Smart disappeared. People were looking on the, looking for her anywhere, and then she was discovered. That's not what happened, at least the way I read it. They actually had a name of a guy who they were looking for, and then eventually that was, that's eventually how that case was solved, and it's great. But let's not, I think, once again, it comes back to our memory. How did that all work? And this is why sometimes memory and eyewitness accounts and things aren't true. Is because we, to use a Roger Clemens term from baseball, we misremember things. I think we think back at Elizabeth Smart and say, well, the reason she was found is because somebody recognized her. Not necessarily. They were already looking for a particular guy because the younger daughter suddenly realized that the guy that was in the house last night was a guy who had worked at their house months before. And then they were on the lookout. The police were on the lookout for him. So it's just different. It's certainly different. And Sherry says, you are right. I read her book, and that's exactly what happened. Thank you for backing me up on that, Sherry. I had to educate myself on Elizabeth Smart case in about 10 minutes today in reading about it, just doing a quick read. I'm glad I got the general facts correct. So let's not, kid ourselves that people naturally see a flyer and then can equate that to somebody that they see a week from now. This is why, I'm not saying putting flyers up and things shouldn't be done, but we also know how often that doesn't work. It doesn't work most of the time. That's a fact. Just like, with dogs. Dogs are brought in on every case. Name the last time that a dog took police to a missing person. I'm not saying it's never happened, but all of us, and I know we all in this group watching tonight, me doing the program, know how much we cover missing persons cases. Name the last case you can think of where a dog led to a missing person. It's pretty rare. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It's rare. Dogs are just a tool. Flyers are just a tool. Polygraphs are just a tool. All they are tools. They don't, eyewitness accounts are just a tool. By themselves, I'm not sure how much they mean. It's just combining everything to see if everything makes sense. That's how I think you go about getting the best idea of what happened in a disappearance. My problem is that too many people just want to believe one thing because it fits their narrative. They want to believe that the dog, because the dog says that the guy got picked up in a car. That fits what they want to happen, so they believe the dog. They believe the polygraph test is a lie because they believe that somebody did, whereas they're just tools. They're just tools. They are not DNA. They are not video evidence. They're nothing like that. They're just tools. They are not the final proof. Christina says the cops are broken tools. Now that's funny. Angie and Jill. Jill, I answered your question earlier. You're going to have to catch it on the replay. Angie, thanks for tuning in tonight. We're getting toward the end of the show, Jill and Angie, but that's okay. So I wanted to talk about that. One more thing, though. Did you see this thing about Jaws? How they're thinking that this woman, her name is Lady in the Dunes, an unidentified woman, I guess from up in New England states. They're now thinking that she might have been an extra in the movie Jaws. Did you see that story? I got to tell you once again, I'm cynical. I just am a cynical guy. I think that this could be a way for, and this was Stephen King's son, who goes by Joe Hill or something like that. He doesn't use his father's last name for whatever reason. He's just trying to get a little publicity. I've looked at I know Jaws well. It's one of my favorite movies. I've watched it many times. I know the exact scene of where that is. To me, the woman in the movie and the sketch of the remains that were found of the woman who was found, they don't look anything alike to me. And the odds of the woman in the movie being the missing person, obviously we know what the odds of that. They're very, very small. But this is one of those things, it can be solved very quickly. You know, if this woman was an extra, she had to fill out some paperwork back in 1974, I'm pretty sure that the production company would save that stuff, especially because it's Jaws. It's a landmark movie. They would save all the paperwork from a movie like that. And usually extras, they're usually, they take pictures of them. In my experience, I have some filmmaking experience. I've worked on a couple big movies when I lived in Las Vegas. That's what they do. They take pictures of extras, even with Polaroids back in the day. They should be able to figure out who the name of the woman who appeared in the movie and see if, you know, she's still alive today, if they can track her down. Now, if they can't track her down, then I might be, I might get a little bit more interested. But this just feels to me like much ado about nothing. It just does. It's interesting, and it's great reading, and I know people love to read that stuff, but from a crime-solving point of view, from being, you know, looking at it very critically and analytically, I just don't think the thing holds water at all. I just don't. So if you saw that, you could take a look at it. It's an interesting read, but it seems to me the thinking behind it is a little flawed. My opinion. And some of this stuff, I would not call myself an expert. I think I'm just using what I've learned about Unfound's cases over the last 2 years. And we are into the 3rd year now, so go figure. Now, as you know, we always finish off every episode, the show, with this the case for this week. And Lana's saying the Jaws story is actually an old story. I think it came back to the public to the lady and the dudes. Okay. All right. This week's disappearance is the disappearance of Melissa Hasley from Des Moines, Iowa on October 18th, 2002. I believe this is our first case in Iowa. I know we've talked a lot about Jody Huisentrude on this show, and we've talked to Caroline Lowe, but we've never technically covered Jody Huisentrude's disappearance. So I think this is the first case. We've been to Nebraska, but I don't think we've been to Iowa, I think. So I think another state is going to be checked off the list. Tough thing about this case is that there were a lot of bad guys around Melissa. She had made some questionable choices in her life. She was in a little bit of prostitution in Des Moines. She was known around town. She got into some drugs. And the facts are that she went to a party, and then at some point at the party, she went out and like sat on a fire escape of the building for a little while, and then she left, and she was never seen again. Now, this case reminds me of some that Unfound has covered, specifically Jamie Bowen, a case I know Jan's watching tonight. Jamie Bowen's case, Lola Catherine Fry's case, you know, kind of feels the same to me. April Pitzer, you know, these cases where young women were surrounded by some guys who weren't the greatest. But is particularly bad in this case because at least 2 of the guys that Melissa knew who were in her life were murderers, outright murderers. Now, granted, one of them was in jail. He'd already committed a murder by the time that she disappeared, but she knew him. His name was Jerry Proctor. We're going to talk about him. The problem is that Jerry Proctor might have committed his crime had an accessory to it, and that guy never went to jail. His name is Doug Daystrom. We talk about him. And then, if you can believe it, Melissa disappeared in 2002. Well, in 2006, her older sister, Georgina, was murdered in Des Moines, Iowa. And that was a murder where the body was left behind. And that guy who did it actually turned himself in. And he is in jail to this day. Well, the belief is that this older sister could have been looking into her younger sister Melissa's disappearance and maybe ruffled a few feathers, and that's why she was murdered. And it's possible that because Melissa knew the guy who murdered her older sister as well. So, and the girl who died, it was actually back in 1994. I actually got the date wrong in the interview, but I'm going to correct it in the summation. Patricia Howlett was her name. And, Lori, that's funny you say that. I'm going to get to that in a second. Patricia Howlett was burned. She was murdered and burned in 1994. And Jerry Proctor went to trial for the murder in 1998. But there's, once again, the belief that Doug Daystrom could have been an accessory to that. And then 2006, Melissa's older sister was murdered. Melissa disappeared in 2002. So we have some other cases, crimes to talk about besides the disappearance of Melissa on Friday. Now, the interview for this episode is with Melissa's other sister. There were 3 sisters. Georgina's the oldest. Lois is in the middle. She is my guest this Friday. And then Melissa was the youngest. And Lois talks about how she and Melissa and Georgina made some bad choices. Were running around in some rough crowds, guys who they knew were a little bit dangerous, but they were doing what they were doing. The good news is that Lois is still with us, obviously, and she cleaned her life up. And she's been drug-free, has a good job and everything for about 7 years now, and I couldn't be happier for her. But she talks about that. We talk about her own personal trials and tribulations in this episode as well, because I thought that was important. Because, here we are. We have 3 sisters who got caught up in some bad things. One of them disappeared. The other one was murdered. And once again, this is the disappearance of Melissa Hasley from Des Moines, Iowa on October 18th, 2002. So there you go. I do have to answer this one thing kind of odd. So that's the case for this Friday. I hope you will tune in. Once again, 2 p.m. Eastern this Friday. And once again, Melissa's sister Lois is the interview, and she did a great job. Lori says, Ed, you remind me of Jason Bateman. Well, Lori, I have a funny story for all of you, you and the rest tonight. Some of you know that I play the sport disc golf. I've been playing for about 7 years, and I play in some tournaments around Florida. I showed up at a tournament in Orlando a few years ago, and the guys that I was playing with thought that I was Jason Bateman. That is a true story. That is an absolutely true story. Now, I know who Jason Bateman is, but I know him from when he and I are close to the same age, back in like the 80s, early 90s. I don't watch TVs these days. I know that he's been in some movies and things. He was in that movie just recently, Game Night, which I did see, but really have not kept up with him in his career or anything. So I actually was approached by a guy at a disc golf tournament asking if I was Jason Bateman. That's a true story. And of course, I got a good chuckle out of it. And the guy had to show me a picture. And I said, oh, yeah, you're right. I do kind of look like him. I think that if you were to see me in person, I don't know how much we really look alike. It's very flattering. I guess Jason Bateman is thought as being a good-looking guy, which is great for him. It's very flattering, but that's a true story. And it happened. I'm going to say that happened in 2015, maybe. 2015, I think. Now, the funny thing on top of that is that there's another guy that I would play disc golf with once in a while who looks like Nicolas Cage. That's a true story, too. And so when he and I would be in the same group together, the other guys would joke around. We're playing, here we are playing disc golf with Jason Bateman and Nicolas Cage. That's also a true story. So, Lori, you are not far off the mark at all regarding the look-alike thing. So that's it's funny, but I've had that told me before, and I guess I can't be too mad about that, right? So there you go. And Emily is saying, I'm riding with my aunt, and she heard you say people said you look like Jason, so she told me to let her see you. If you didn't, she says you do. Emily, I'll take it. I'll take it. Atlanta's saying, oh, great, now I see it in the eyes. Well, before we get off on a completely crazy tangent regarding all of this, we've been doing this for over an hour now, so I think that I'm going to call it a show. Got to answer some really good questions tonight. We started off talking about how I'm still in Pennsylvania. I told you about meeting with Jennifer Bertetto last Friday. I talked about meeting with Dr. Eric Grabowski last Saturday. And I'm going to be seeing my brother and sister this weekend. By the way, I'm wearing an Unfound shirt tonight. And I'm going to be working more on shirts and things once I get back to Florida. I've kind of not been able to do that while I'm up here. I took a question from Jill. Took some questions from all of you that were really good ones. I talked about the missing person related to the Jaws movie. We talked about Sherry Mayhan a little bit and the sighting of the van, the selling of the van allegedly, but I don't believe it's the van. We talked about the reliability on eyewitness accounts and seeing people, and identifying them. And I explained some statistics regarding Unfound and sightings of missing people and how I had a conversation with a viewer about that. And then we talked about Molly Tippett's a little bit as well. And then most importantly, we talked about this coming Friday's case, the disappearance of Melissa Hasley in Des Moines, Iowa on October 18th, 2002. So that case is about 16 years old. And the guest for that, and Lori, I did take it as a total compliment. You're very kind. No, don't get me wrong. Very kind. Thank you. Okay, Dorothy, I'm not even going to read that. But we are done. My favorite time of the week. And you can hear me this Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, for the disappearance of Miss Melissa Hasley, where her sister, Lois, will be the guest. And Lois did a great job. I think you're going to find it very informative. And hopefully we can put a little more pressure on a couple of these guys who are still walking around as free men. So I'm going to go. Great talking to you all tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. I cannot thank you enough. And you will hear me on Friday. And I will see you all again soon. Once again, thank you so much. Favorite time of the week. Good night. Thanks to everybody. Thank you so much.